This week's kicker is Magic the Gathering and Straightgate. It's a two-parter, and I gotta tell you part one so I can tell you part two. When Magic the Gathering started, you, the player, were a planeswalker. And at the time, planeswalkers, in the fiction of Magic, were incredibly powerful, almost godlike beings. This meant that for the most part, many of the Magic stories were generic magical fantasy stories about gods, except those gods were actually planeswalkers. Or they were stories about planeswalkers fighting other planeswalkers or being godlike beings. Bad stories. So they did a big universe-changing storyline and changed what planeswalkers were. That meant that planeswalkers were now regular spellcasters who could also travel between planes. This kicked off an era of storytelling heavily based stylistically on comic books, especially the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was growing around this time. So in this new storytelling style, they created something called the Gatewatch, sometimes called the Justice League, which was obviously based on the Avengers. It was a collection of planeswalkers who worked together to do things they could not do on their own. During this era, Magic stories were available for free online once a week, and if the story was about the Gatewatch would be in it, which they usually were. As you would expect, the Gatewatch included a planeswalker of each of Magic colors. Jace was the blue one. He was also the originator of the Gatewatch. Gideon Jura was the white one. Chandra and Alar was the red one. Nissa Ravine was the green one. And Liliana Vess was the black one. While there were individual relationships between members of the Gatewatch, the story focused on larger conflicts. But relationships were formed. Jace and Gideon had a jock-nerd bromance. Jace and Liliana had a dysfunctional bang-it-out ship. And Chandra and Nissa had a delicate, slow-moving relationship that could not be heading for lesbianness any more directly than two one-way tickets to Lesbos Island. So around the time of the War of the Sparks set, Wizards of the Coast decided to change their storytelling paradigm away from the free weekly stories and towards books that cost money. The thing about Magic story, though, is that it has never been good. No, not even that one. Shut the fuck up. There have been good stories. There have been good moments. There have been likable characters. Yahenni is the best. But Magic's story has never been good. Even when novels were created as sources of revenue, they were not good. The free Magic story was a marketing device which served to garner emotional investment to sell cards. And that is not a bad thing, as long as we enter into an agreement that that's what it is. I like Dovin Band, and I do not have enough time to bitch about that right now. The notion that the story will be a source of income for Wizards and a product worth buying raises expectations slightly. And slightly is something the Magic the Gathering story can only look up to and admire from afar via telescope. Without reconciling fundamental play and story ludonarrative dissonance, the story will be bad and the cards will not sync with the story. You're just telling generic stories with magic paint on them. Morons don't care. But I care, and this is my podcast, so figure it the fuck out, man. What I am saying is that I have never had high expectations for the Magic the Gathering story. And I believe few Magic fans have had high expectations. I believe many of us knew exactly what this was. But it seems that Wizards of the Coast, of all people, did not. They seemed to believe that our mild interest and willing suspension of disbelief indicated that they were writing Shakespeare and not the latest WWE melodrama. My only reading of this is that they honestly believe we ate that shit up. And as I will talk about tomorrow with the War of the Spark novels, they thought we would pay for a dump truck full of dumps. And they were wrong. The first novel published under this scheme was poorly received. The second novel was as well received as A Shart in an Operating Room. War of the Spark 2, I don't care to promote it in any way by using its real name, was flawed on so many levels it is hard to describe. The marquee Magic the Gathering YouTube channel, Tolarian Community College, took 20 minutes to do a broad survey of the basic problems with this novel. The one banner around which Magic the Gathering fans have rallied has been what I have termed Straightgate. Within War of the Spark 2, the relationship between Chandra and Nissa is explicitly mentioned. It is explicitly ended. Chandra explicitly mentions within her internal dialogue her strong preference for masculine, decidedly masculine, men. She characterizes earlier discussions between her and Nissa about how they love each other as explicitly platonic. It is a retcon to produce an explicitly straight Chandra, which is out of proportion with the subdued, barely existing romantic relationship of the two up to that point. Maxim37 says there is no overkill. There is only open fire and reload. But in this case, an explicit destruction of a relationship of the words platonic and the confirmed sexual attraction of Chandra explicitly towards men is overkill for a relationship which could have been ended with something as simple as petering out, or a 2-week time jump in which the two spent time together and realized that they wouldn't work out, in a natural and unsurprising end result from the outgoing and impulsive Chandra and the quiet and withdrawn Nissa. That would have been simple, tasteful, intelligent, respectful, believable, organic. God, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Look, I get that if Chandra and Nissa had gotten married and adopted a bunch of kids, or just had kids because fucking magic, who gives a shit, and then lived long happy lives together and retired together quietly in the country and died hand in hand, happy as a fully actualized, untraumatic lesbian duo. And when you take the slider from that end and you slide it further away from that, you are going to linearly make more people angry and more people unhappy, like inevitably. But that isn't to say that there is only one way to do this. You can have trauma and twists and turns, and you can even end a homosexual relationship or a relationship between underrepresented groups without pissing everyone off. It's weird you chose not to do that, because there were a lot of places on that slider which weren't this. But you did it. You cranked it all the way at the other end. You made something stupid, reactionary. That was a retcon. You got homophobes who just care about story structure angry. Like, how do you do that? I'm fucking impressed. I try to piss people off all the time, and you fucking people did it like it was nothing. I get that a lot of people want to blame writer Greg Weisman for this. He's best known for writing Gargoyles. Gargoyles just hit Disney Plus, and he's like, hey, why don't we binge Gargoyles and bring it back? And it's like, buddy, you do not want a high profile right now. You do not want your profile any fucking higher. And I don't know if it's entirely fair to blame. I mean, obviously, the quality of the writing is his fucking fault. One of the many problems with this book is the shit fucking writing. I don't know at whose feet we should lay the stinking, desiccated, gut-burst rat of the unbelievable, actual Mary Sue character named Rat. I suspect it is writer Greg Weisman, but I would not pin this sort of sea change on him for plain moral reasons. Do not get me wrong, I am ready to upraise a pitchfork in the direction of any motherfucker behind any of this stupid and malicious nonsense. Like everyone else, I don't know the exact cause. I have seen people say it is to appeal to the Chinese market. I have seen people say that it is because the new head of the Magic Story wrote a book about he and all grown men want to fuck little girls, and there's a long-standing close relationship between men who view women as cum receptacles and men who hate homosexuals. I've also seen conjecture that it is because of the new Netflix series, which stars Chandra and Chase, which, by the way, is the fucking stupid beyond all comparison. I have the two magical abilities, which let me see why that's a stupid fucking idea. I read comics, I have a brain. You cannot have two characters in two media with two creative teams running their actions. Obviously, you fucking idiots, you fucking morons. Because the weird thing about Wizards of the Coast is that they are pretty progressive. I mean, they seem that way. They keep a balance of men and women in their stories, portray a spectrum of human ethnicities in their card art, and, as everyone has mentioned during this whole debacle, wrote the well-reviewed story The Truth of Names, about a trans character and how her struggle was linked to the life and culture of her home plane of Tarkir. Wizards introduced Tiro and Kianos of Miletus, a pair of gay men and kings who headlined a commander deck back in 2016. And let's remember, the whole reason that people are angry is because Wizards of the Coast put Chandra and Nissa beside each other under a soft-focused lens with emotionally constipated dialogue and, most crucially, said, you're welcome. When folks saw that as homosexual representation and said, thanks, Wizards, I don't take any of that for granted. Tyro and Kianos were set up years in advance. There was an identically presented straight couple released beforehand. If you didn't complain about the card with the straight couple, you couldn't say shit about couples not being an appropriate topic for a Magic card when there was a gay couple on a card. And then there was the Guardians of Meletis card that presaged the two's existence. And I went in on this at the time. Yeah, the monochromatic statues buried under layers of armor and viewed from a distance through a misty morning are both men. So when the flavor text says they were lovers, it means gay representation in Magic, I intone to my fellow gays. It takes time. They're working against homophobia, not for it. It was piss weak, and I knew it was piss weak, but I wanted to encourage Wizards of the Coast. And in that case, I was vindicated by the actual Tyro and Kianos 3 years later. But they weren't actually working against homophobia. I mean, it happens to all of us. Me less than you, but it happens to all of us. I assumed that Wizards of the Coast's interest in representing folks who weren't the hardcore nucleus of white, straight, cisgendered nerd boys was genuine, and not solely based on a corporate entity positioning itself to make the easiest sell to the lowest hanging fruits, or not fruits, I guess. I would be a fool if I believed now or ever believed again that Magic is a progressive company, because I am a gay man. I've seen the patterns of begrudging tolerance, condescending acceptance, true love. And here's your fucking representation. UPC number 9781609386719. Now shut up and get ready to let go of it as soon as the straights need it for something. Some absolute fungal life form from the bottom of the internet coined the phrases white knight and virtue signaling. And when used by their creators, they're intended to mean that the target does not believe their own argument because they only purport to believe in their principles in exchange for material gain. In the case of white knighting, that material gain is romantic intimacy with women, and in the case of virtue signaling, the material gain is being a decent person in a society held together by principles. It's a thing said by cynical, unprincipled materialist slime. Anyone using those phrases to win an internet argument is executing the sickest self-burn possible. But words mean things. Those behaviors exist, and they are contemptible. So when a company writes one trans story in 5 years, or trades a headlining gay romance for one held by a B-tier planeswalker and daddy Ral Zarek, you can call it performative progressivism, or marketing, or late-stage capitalism, because the sun rising in your eyes as you drive to work is late-stage capitalism, and as an aside, words need a specific meaning to mean anything. But you can also call it what it is. Virtue signaling, because it's shitty and stupid to assume a person has no principles because they are enacting and defending those principles. Jesus Christ. But companies truly have no principles but self-enrichment and the whims of their executives. I mean, look, Peter Thiel is as gay as they come, and for 1 nickel of startup cash, he'd sell out every gay dude who's not currently giving him a beige. Not to cynically declare every move by companies to be inclusive as disingenuous, but they'll be inclusive and diverse appealing as long as it's profitable, or profitable enough. As long as it's practicable, minority folks should support and applaud those efforts. You should mirror their grin and shake their hand knowing that each of you has a dagger deftly concealed behind your back, waiting for the moment the other one lets down their end of the deal. That's the Darwinian nature of a society created by economic actors. And you absolutely do not need me to tell you how fucked that is. All of this bitching makes me think of why I started playing Magic. I was a kid who grew up with zero disposable income and very few friends. Magic wasn't a matter of conspicuous consumption. Where I came from, it was considered by some to be satanic. But then so were the X-Men for some reason. The cards were visually arresting, and these were pre-modern borders. They were fantastic and well expressed, and each one told you about a piece of a larger world. Yes, they are a collection of data whose efficiency will determine their value, but in a lot of ways, Wizards' first shitty Magic story that made you want to buy more little pieces of cardboard was the one you told yourself when you saw your first Magic card. I had played CCGs before I hopped on the train during the CCG boom of the late 90s, believably enough for the Star Trek CCG. One reason I know so many details about Star Trek is because it was all on the cards. I played some Battletech next, and it was also a Richard Garfield Wizards of the Coast joint, so it played a lot like Magic. I played Magic in the end because that's what the guys were playing, and also Magic hadn't imploded and it was still being printed. The guys were already bought in though. They were fans of Kamigawa and Muradin and Ravnik. Piloting a shuttlecraft with 3 ensigns on it and then getting jacked by Rogue Borg was not comparable play to cheating out a turn 3 Phyrexian Dreadnought. So I created decks out of their collections using the linchpin cards that they had not made decks out of already. And I did that until I had enough money for my own cards, and ironically, that was when they had mostly quit playing. But that was Alara for me, specifically Alara Reborn. Alara Reborn was an all-gold set. All of the spells were multicolor. It followed on from Alara and Conflux, but it was definitely its own thing. And maybe it is because of that I am keenly aware of the sets of Magic the Gathering. Like the flavor fits into the facets of the lore, the cards fit into the facets of the set. Now, I am not a fan of the phrase draft chaff, even though, words mean things to describe ideas, but I prefer a setting where cards have value. I don't care how good a card is. I want to play it. I want to use it. I want to see it fulfill its function. Like any gem created in the second era of the Diamond Authority, that's what it's for. Notoriously, I have over 150 decks. That's not including role-playing decks, decks under construction, EDH decks, experimental decks, decks for experimental formats, or anything else. Part of appreciating a card is using it, and I have decks for everything down to banding paired with indestructibility and paradox haze paired with saprolings. Naturally, those aren't good decks. I have made maybe one good deck in my entire life, and it was an accident. Some people are BAMFs, badass motherfuckers. I am just a BAM, bad at Magic. But I like my decks. I love them. I don't get to play them much because what format allows banding to play, much less compete? My platonic form of a Magic collection is an interlocking set of formats, games, and tournaments that include a place for every card and strategy, giving every dog its day. A meta structure that defies good and bad and comprises an environment of simply playing. I conjecture on a meta balancing elements to give cards value or reduced cost based on their unwantedness. I mean, if the Pauper format had been about availability by total deck cost instead of being about rarity, I might have tried it out. It was a step in the right direction to make a format that's nothing but common cards, but it's only a small step. That's why I prefer cards in their original sets and why I am a big fan of drafts. Drafted decks lack the focused sprint towards a win condition and are improvised and not chained to a narrow meta of a half dozen viable builds copied from the internet and dutifully piloted by drones. Draft has a context that includes a power level which allows for any cards to be in it. It's randomized, it's intimate. The drafting process is its own game that is a good social opportunity. It makes tight, competitive games not based on money. But an unsurprising number of players are not here to test their skill or to accept the uncertainty of an equivocal fight. Money gets money, and that brings me to why I quit playing Magic. It was not any one thing that made me quit Magic. One day I was pre-ordering a box or a bundle for each set, buying boosters with some spare money, the way you might buy a pack of gum or a Coke, attending pre-release drafts, occasionally appearing at local EDH leagues, and reading the Magic story online. And then, I looked up and just said, as soon as Nicol Bolas is done with his stupid plan, I'm out. I was truly and without scorn or judgment out of fucks. But why? A few reasons do come to mind. Brawl. It is actually part of that crystalline megastructure I was going on about. I certainly like EDH. EDH made with cards that rotate annually, but requires a deeper cut into the draft chaff. It had a pull, but it just felt cynical. The popular fan-made format of EDH mushed up with the churning, purchase-driven format of Standard. Elite Masters? Or was it Mythic Masters? It was the $250 package for 8 Planeswalkers and 24 boosters. Get fucked, Wizard. That's not even in the script. It's just reflex when I remember that. I know I just did a whole bit last week about, hey, if it's too expensive, don't buy it. Maybe it's not for you. And that is fair, me from last week. Maybe that shit isn't for me. And then once I thought about that, I thought, hey, maybe a lot of this Magic shit isn't for me. Arena. Arena is some shit that ain't for me. It's the new online version of Magic, and it instantly became a facet of Magic's product outlay. It was quickly integrated into their Twitch streaming. Influencers who played Arena on YouTube were being highlighted in advance, and Arena was given its own ladder into Magic tournaments, and none of that is bad. In fact, I would completely expect Magic to embrace a digital format, which honestly isn't as wasteful as printing one good card and surrounding it with 14 pieces of high print quality heavy cardstock garbage. Wizards' draw towards Arena is best expressed as the distracted boyfriend meme, and I am the girl in the blue shirt. Competitive EDH. That's it. That's the bullet point. Competitive EDH. EDH was supposed to be a fun, casual format where you played cards that were not usually viable. Because of the singleton format of EDH, you might be forced to use other, less optimal versions of cards to act as second or third copies of linchpins. Instead, we got a bevy of printed redundant cards which turned EDH into another format based on skimming the cream off the top of Magic's library. This time with the cream engineered to make the rest of the... whatever goes under the cream... is it milk? Milk is good. How can cream be the cream of milk? And finally, the story. The story wasn't good, but it was free, and I enjoyed reading it. People get angry about it. They're like, it's just marketing. It's just a commercial. You're letting marketing into your brain like it's a fun commercial. People, calm the fuck down. We all like Super Bowl commercials. They're memorable and creative. But actually, there was a moment where I stopped. It wasn't the power creep or the constantly broken standard format or the products being delivered to market via junk jet, all fairly long-standing issues. It brings us back to the beginning of this week. It was when the books were going behind a paywall. When they asked me to pay for the Super Bowl commercials, I thought, wow, if you want money for this crap, it has to be good. And honestly, being good at this shit isn't fun. That's it. Magic used to feel like a fun thing I did, instead of a product that I bought, and that feeling was never based on fact. And losing it may not have been anything Wizards could have prevented, actually. It's gone.